Stream shows good.
There it is.
It's in the show. Sharing. Show is shared. And intro is rolling. I killed the audio feed to use.
Oh, good. I'm glad that was intentional because I was about to throw something.
No.
Not again! We are the late night crew, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And
that's our home.
We dominate with numbers at night. I mean, come on. 11 o'clock Eastern to have 200 people in the show every night. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Saturday night and Friday night, we're up against it a little bit, being Sunday night. People are going to go back to work, but I think we still make it our own, you know?
Yep, exactly.
I'm even thinking about moving out to like midnight. Just fully embracing the fucking late night, you know?
Nice.
Because, you know, I can never decide on a time.
That's awesome. Everybody's hearing our audio right now, which is awesome, because that's what we told everybody. Remember that? We told everybody we were going to tell them pre-show, we were going to slip it in there. We were just going to show them.
Yeah, no, leave it up. Leave it on. Leave it on.
Yeah.
Are you leaving the audio up for them?
Yeah, they can hear us.
Yeah, these stupid fucking fans. They'll watch whenever I tell them to watch.
Fucking right. Oh, this dude is fucking awesome. We told everybody we were gonna
do this one day.
We told you we were gonna do this. It's not like we fucking did it, blindly, and you're just catching us on the slide.
That's right.
I love Poppy. Poppy says, "Hey, fuck you."
So James, tell your sister to call me, by the way.
Okay, I'll do that. I'm gonna jump on that right now.
Cool.
I love it, Lexi. Stupid fucking fan here. It's fucking awesome, man. Yes, you are supposed to hear us right now.
Hey, fuck you.
Don't say anything incriminating.
I'll have more wiggle room after the election.
Yes, I will. We gotta get with Vlad on that. Hey, did you
tell Mr. Putin? Yeah.
Did you get the last memo? Jay Wick said, "Fuck you both." How about that?
So I got my Russian passport in the mail the other day.
Duffy says, "Strike one." Minuteman says, "Fuck you guys." We told you, man. We just shoot the shit. We don't even talk about the show. We just fucking get ready, push live, and go.
We're just killing time until it starts.
Yep.
Once it starts, we can't wait till it's over.
Catch me outside, boys. Miles Dean says, "We want an intel drop, not small talk."
The small talk is the intel drop.
That's right. You see
People break the fourth wall like that.
Deep into the minds of Biggie and myself, how much we actually think about this shit. Dude, this 60-inch monitor in front of me is fucking insane.
You'll get used to it.
Yeah, I know.
Your eyes will adjust slowly, and then you'll need corrective surgery.
Unconstitutional. Man, this shit is hard.
Hoax.
All right, here we go. 30 seconds now.
30 seconds till we go live.
What? No state secrets? No state secrets.
No secrets.
Jim Link says, "Is this a shit show or what?" All right, here we go. 10 seconds. Mike's hot. Aloha and welcome to, what are we on? Oh yeah, Trust and Verify. We know you guys can hear us. Trust and Verify.
Look at the time we've got on the stage. 1 a.m. We don't know what's going on.
Oh my God.
That'll eventually come back around with daylight savings. Don't worry about it. That'll be fine.
That's right.
We'll let it catch up.
Right. Pick up the pace, guys. Here we go. Welcome to Trust and Verify, the only show that tells you never believe a word I fucking say, always verify it. In order for us to get started with tonight's episode, we got to introduce my friend, my partner, my co-host, Boogie Bumper. Boogie, how's it going, brother?
Good. I think everyone knows we're doing pretty well.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. Thanks, everyone, for joining. Thanks for sharing the show out. That's going to be, if you're listening to the podcast right now and you didn't watch live, this is why you should watch live on a Sunday night. If you're listening to the podcast right now, you have no idea about the in-joke that just took place here with the few people in this small audience on this corner of the internet. And you're going to be talking to the other people in the audience in the week, to come, and you're going to say, hey, did you listen to the Trust and Verify podcast? And they're going to say, no, I watched it live. And you're going to be like, what are you laughing at? And they're going to say, I can't tell you. You just had to be there.
You had to be there.
You had to be there for it. But thanks for joining us. Happy Father's Day, James.
Hey, thanks, brother. I appreciate that. Yep. Kids called. I ignored them as usual. It was awesome.
Good. Yeah. Wow. Testament to modern parenting. Speaking of parenting, we've got lots to get through. Can I open the kimono, James, and just do a little bit of a reveal?
I think we're fully exposed at this point.
We're fully exposed. So wash your eyes out before you go to bed, unless you have nightmares, children. I was perusing around the New York Times opinion pieces, and I came across this little article here. Before we get into more topical stuff, I thought, I'm always weary now. I'm so cynical that when something is particularly, would you say, understated, I get curious. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I get suspicious of things that are innocuous in these pages now. And I'm going to explain to you why that's the case and why you shouldn't just breeze over these little articles like this. Americans need more neighbors. And I thought, is this about immigration? Is it about something like that? No, it's worse, actually. A big idea in Minneapolis points the way for other cities desperately in need of housing. Listen to some of the language in this article, James, and audience, and thanks again for joining us. Housing is one area of American life where government really is the problem. The United States is suffering from an acute shortage of affordable places to live, particularly in the urban areas where economic opportunity increasingly is concentrated. You can already see the way we're starting to position this here, right? Privilege. And perhaps the most important reason is that local governments are preventing construction. I would argue that the most important reason is perhaps the rampant runaway mass immigration over the last 4 or 5 decades, but what the hell do I know? I mean, when you start shoveling hundreds of thousands of people into these mass sprawling urban centres, they've got to live somewhere. And when more people are competing for housing, guess what happens to the price of housing, James? It goes up.
Right.
Don't be misled by the construction cranes that punctuate city skylines. This is the article. The number of housing units completed in the United States last year, adjusted for size of the population, was lower than in any year between 1968 and 2008. And the problem is most acute in major urban areas along the east and west coasts. James, which party politically dominates the east and west coasts? Just out of curiosity.
I think that's the libs. I think that's the libs, yeah.
Interesting, isn't it? Housing prices and homelessness are rising across the country because there is not enough housing. Increasing the supply of urban housing would help to address a number of the problems plaguing the United States. Constructions could increase economic growth and create blue-collar jobs. Allowing more people to live in cities could mitigate inequality and reduce carbon emissions. Yet in most places, housing, which is again a falsehood, because if you look, the most heavily populated cities on Earth are, by definition, the most polluted as well. I mean, have you ever seen pictures of LA at sunset or perhaps Shanghai in China, James? Yet in most places, housing construction remains wildly unpopular. People who think of themselves as progressives, environmentalists, and egalitarians fight fiercely against urban development, complaining about traffic and shadows and the sanctity of lawns. That's actually something that I'd like to express that we've had some success with here, getting the environmental movement on board with pushing back against mass migration to Australia. Because once we made the connection between mass immigration and pollution, the environmentalists were forced to support us in trying to push back against mass migration. And we've had some small breakthroughs in that regard with pressuring government, particularly the Conservative government of the day, James, so you'll be pleased to know. That's why a recent breakthrough in Minneapolis is so important. This is where it gets to the rub. Now, listen carefully, children. You're not going to like this. The city's political leaders have constructed a broad consensus in favour of more housing, and the centrepiece is both simple and brilliant. Minneapolis is ending single-family zoning. What is single-family zoning? What is single-family zoning, James? Well, people should be free to live in a prairie-style house on a quarter-acre lot in the middle of Minneapolis so long as they can afford the land and taxes. But zoning subsidises that extravagance by prohibiting better, more concentrated use of the land. It allows people to own homes they could not afford if the same land was used for an apartment building. It is a huge entitlement program for the benefit of the most entitled residents. The loose fabric of single-family neighbourhoods, James, drives up the cost of housing by limiting the supply of available units. It contributes to climate change by necessitating sprawl and long commutes. It constrains the economic potential of cities by limiting growth. In December, the Minneapolis City Council voted 12-1 to allow the construction of at least 3 residential units per lot throughout the city as part of a larger package of changes intended to increase housing construction. Under the plan, most construction will be concentrated in the centre of the city and along transit corridors. For people who are familiar with the UN Agenda 2030, this is going to sound scarily, common language to you. But the elimination of single-family zoning was crucial in building political support for the plan, ending a system under which more than 60% of Minneapolis was sheltered from change. There you go. Single-family zoning needs to come to an end. Now, do you want to make a comment on that before I jump to drawing the links together, James?
I was going to make a really brilliant comment, and then you shocked me with the rest of the article, so I forgot what the brilliant comment was. That is fucking amazing. That you guys realize what they're going to do, right? You guys understand that they're going to eliminate your house, right? They're going to tell you that climate change says you can't have your property anymore. Your kids won't be able to have your house anymore. That's been in your family for 100 years. It has to get torn down in order to put up a fucking apartment building full of whatever. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous. It's absolutely unbelievable. What you need to change your segment from what the fuck is going on in Florida to what the fuck is going on in Minneapolis.
Well, the problem is, James, I don't need to say what the fuck is going on in Minneapolis because I've already done my homework and I already know what's happening in Minneapolis, and I'm going to share what's happening in Minneapolis with you and the audience. This was published on the private sector development blog of the World Bank website. Okay? So obviously a known right-wing conspiracy theory website, the World Bank private sector development blog. And I'm fully aware that I'm probably the only person in the room who has bothered to click on that link. All right? Housing is at the center of the Sustainable Development Agenda. This was back in 2016, you'll be pleased to know. Clearly, a lot of what has gone wrong with cities is related in one way or another to housing. The future of urbanization will therefore depend on how countries and cities position housing as a priority in the public debate around sustainable development. You can substitute sustainable development for deindustrialization if you prefer. From slums to gated communities, from overcrowding to sprawl, from homelessness to the vacant houses. Remember, this is 2 years ago on the World Bank website. There is much evidence that housing is shaping cities worldwide, regretfully in many cases by producing fragmentation and inequality. The resulting models are leading to social, environmental and financial costs far beyond what the majority of cities can afford. The struggle to obtain adequate and affordable housing could affect at least 1.6 billion people globally within a decade. They have a couple of nice of them to put these little quotes in here for me so I didn't have to find them out. And you can just click on that and tweet it out directly from the blog. Isn't that nice? We need to encourage innovative and more inclusive housing finance systems, James.
Oh, my God.
Redistribution of wealth, you'll be pleased to know. Because remember, in a New York Times article, they said the problem is that people are living in these little 1 acre house on the prairie style that they couldn't afford if that land was open up for mass development, right? So that's the problem. It creates inequality and centralization of money. And this one here, James, the future of cities depends on how well and how soon access to adequate housing will be provided for all. Positioning housing at the center of national and local urban agendas will be instrumental for achieving this goal and promoting inclusion and equality of opportunities in the urban development process. In order to place housing at the center, some of the fundamental guiding principles should be considered. That is, housing is inseparable from urbanization, systemic reforms, housing and slum upgrading policies, place matters and urbanization, and human rights principles, James. Now, this all comes courtesy of the UN, and it's not new, despite the New York Times saying, oh, this is a big new idea. No, this is not a new idea. These are the ideas that come from the UN, which are pushed through local government first, which then filter up to state government, and then intended to filter up to federal government, hence things like the Green New Deal. You slap a new sticker on it, all of a sudden it becomes a new idea, but a new idea it is not. This little video I've got for you here, I'm only going to play a couple of minutes of it. This has around 1.7 million views, and it came out almost 14 years ago when Agenda 2030 was called Agenda 21, James. Right. So I'm just going to play a couple of minutes of it here, and you can look this video up for yourself and see what it's all about. Let's have a look.
As described in the Declaration of Independence. You see, I sat on the Santa Cruz Agenda 21 committees. Now, this was a lot of crazy ideas. This was back in the mid-90s. Crazy ideas I heard. Mother Earth's surface wasn't to be scratched. Human beings were to be concentrated into human settlement zones. Educational systems were to focus on the environment as the central organizing principle. All aspects of life were covered. Well, I went to these committees at the request of some people who told me that I needed to understand what was going on, and I came back and I said, this is craziness. This is so silly. It has no chance of having any effect on our society. Well, I was wrong. The United States government's support for sustainable development, Agenda 21, is very clear. In 1992, while the Rio Conference was going on, George Bush, then president, was there where he executed the Agenda 21 protocols on behalf of the United States and brought it back to Washington, D.C. Within a year, Bill Clinton, by executive order, no congressional review, established the President's Council for Sustainable Development. In Santa Cruz, we've got a 2-lane freeway system. We need 4, but what we're getting is hundreds of millions of dollars of federal money to take a dilapidated rail line that Southern Pacific wants to put in the hands of somebody else so that a commuter line can be built along the railroad track. That'll be followed by 14-story buildings where people will live and stack them and pack them units, where developers or so-called sustainable developers will build these high rises with federal dollars. In fact, Santa Cruz has received a $300 million federal grant to build the first 3,000 of these stack them and pack them units.
James, it's all a new idea. Americans need more neighbors. A big idea in Minneapolis points the way for other cities desperately in need of housing.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable that people don't catch on to the buzzwords after 14 years. Sustainable development. This is all buzzwords that are just designed to drive us, the masses, into the cities, into their control, into these things. Now, let me get this straight, because I want to be very clear. I have no problem with people turning old shipping containers into stack 'em and pack 'em housing. if that's what you want. I actually think they look pretty cool if that's what you
idea.
want. I mean, I think it's awesome to do for yourself, or even if you own the property and you want to turn them into 5 high-rise condos. Awesome. It's what you want to do. That's not what they're saying here. They're saying here is they're going to basically take away your rights through force to take your property, because you won't be able to afford the taxes, because they're going to make you pay for the taxes for what they believe. Think about it like this. If they
Correct.
think that your property could stack up 100 units, they're going to make you pay taxes for what they say they could think they could stack on that property. So they're going to make your taxes pay for 100 houses instead of 1. See, that's what they're going to do to you. They're going to fuck you in the ass every chance they can get to get their way, to get you to do what they want you to do. This is a full package. It is absolutely everything from transportation to housing to food. Think about what they're trying to do to you. And it's happening all over the place. And they've been buzzwording us to death with this sustainable bullshit to where millennials have never heard anything else. It's like common vocabulary for them. Well, yeah, we should farm as long as it's sustainable. Well, yeah, we should have housing as long as it's sustainable. This is already pre-programmed into their brains. We got to decondition people now. We got to make sure that we're exposing this kind of shit all the time, because this is what's going to happen to us, is they're going to take away everything from you. Everything.
Well, just keep an eye on the upcoming Democrat leadership debates, James, later in the week. And just play a game at home. See how many times things like sustainable development, sustainable housing, sustainable farming, sustainable industry, see how many times those things get mentioned. That they just get dropped in conversationally without ever being challenged on the definition of what that actually means. We're going to play a little bit of a press conference from Nancy Pelosi, James, later on. And we're going to show you the Democrat and the left-wing love of reframing things along fantastical, almost, cynical, innocuous lines of rubbish in order to push through what they actually really want. But before we do that, could it be that we're just a little bit crazy?
No.
I give you still on. James. Yale psychiatrist Bandy Lee, there's the lovely young Bandy Lee, Trump's mental health is now a national and global emergency. Robert Mueller's report is 448 pages long and took almost 2 years to complete. 19 lawyers and at least 40 other people assisted with the investigation. It involves interviews with 500 people. 34 people were indicted, James. 7 have pled guilty and 1 was convicted at trial, which is a tremendously poor hit rate, I must say. 1 guy was convicted at trial. 500 interviews? Please. The facts presented are damning. Donald Trump obstructed justice, James. Trump and his inner circle both publicly and privately sought to collude with Russian agents to influence the 2016 presidential election. Again, I'll give you one of the slogans of this show: the truth does not matter anymore. They will just roll right over the top of you in this informational blitzkrieg. Their tanks are moving too fast. They are rolling over the tombstones which your facts represent. They do not care. They are not looking back. Dr. Bandy Lee, who is a professor of psychiatry at the Yale School of Medicine and editor of the best-selling book, The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump, convened a panel comprised of leading mental health experts to evaluate Donald Trump based on his behavior as detailed in the Mueller report. Their definitive conclusion, James: Trump is mentally unfit, a threat to the United States and the world, and as such should have his powers severely restricted. Yes, isn't this what we want? We want a panel of unelected experts to decide how much power the president should have. What could possibly go wrong? What could possibly go wrong, James? At the invitation of several Democratic members of Congress, you don't say, Lee and other mental health professionals will present their findings about Donald Trump's mental health at what they hope will be a bipartisan congressional meeting in Washington next month. Yes, come to Washington. You are just a bipartisan expert. We hope to have a bipartisan discussion on why the powers of the president must be severely restricted. But, James, the funny thing here is I remembered this name, Bandy Lee. You and I have been doing this show for about a year. We've been doing our own shows for a couple of years now, And I thought, Bandy Lee, I've heard this name before somewhere. So I went back into my archive and I put in Bandy Lee in my hard drive. There she is. There she is. 7th of January 2018. Trump is now dangerous. That makes his mental health a matter of public interest. It's like, does anybody else hate the fact that Hollywood doesn't seem to come up with any original movies anymore? Everything is a remake of a remake of a remake. Have you noticed that? There's no more original thought in Hollywood, and there's no more original thought in Washington, D.C. either, it seems. This world authority in psychiatry, consulted by US politicians, argues that the president's mental fitness deserves scrutiny. So again, just like the Agenda 2030 issue, we've got a new idea. We're going to cram people into these high-rises and rip people out of their 1 acre lots for sustainable development. It's brand new. We've only been talking about it since the 1980s when George Bush Sr. was in power, but never mind that. It's a new idea. And now Bandy Lee comes out last week and says, Donald Trump's mental health is now a national and global emergency after the Mueller report. But Dr. Lee, you were saying the same thing over 12 months ago. I mean, wolf, 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 wolf. And just out of interest, James, before I kick to you, there's this great website that you should check out called psychsearch.net. So I thought I'd have a little look for Bandy Lee. Press release, APA calls for an end to armchair psychiatry. This is one day after Bandy Lee's article in The Guardian. Today, the American Psychiatric Association reiterates its continued and unwavering commitment to the ethical principle known as the Goldwater Rule. We at the APA call for an end to psychiatrists providing professional opinions in the media about public figures whom they have not examined. So before people jump up and down and say, the APA is rotten, the APA has got to go, this woman is operating outside of the APA. In fact, the APA is disavowing her. And they're going to tell you that she's a respected expert, that she's well respected amongst politicians and her peers, and she's published all of these papers. The APA themselves consider her to be a rogue professional, they would say. And here, just another one, James. Dr. Lee is not a member of the APA and is not subject to APA's ethics code. There you go. So she's a random intellectual spewing an opinion, nothing more.
Yeah, I got two things to say. Obviously, fuck Bandy Lee. But beyond that, obviously if she doesn't lose her medical license, she's actually set back psychiatry a very long way. I don't know how much, but there's people now that will not trust psychiatrists at all. Fuck you. You guys are proven hacks that don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You cannot, this is so outside the bounds of medical practice that, most of us are just looking at you guys like you're a bunch of fucking quacks, all of you. Because if you don't get rid of this chick, you're just as bad as anyone else. Having said that, I want to move something over that some of our followers like UK Neil will recognize in the article that you just read. And you yourself probably would recognize this as well. How many people in the audience realize what an enlightened monarchy is and how it occurred? Do you understand what they're trying to do to the president right now? Do you understand how fucking dangerous this is? They want to turn America into England. They want to completely remove the power of the executive branch and install that power into Congress. I want you to really think about that. We will have
power by birthright or power ordained by God, but if you're an atheist, it's a power ordained by the expert panels who will decide for you.
That's right. I want you to think about how fucking dangerous that is. See, this is the kind of shit that comes out of lefties' minds. Just another way to get to socialism. Every single one. Just another way to get to socialism. Okay? That's what is going on here as hell. I mean, it is scary as hell. Sorry. My brain just skipped right to that. That's what they're doing. Think about everything you just said in there about restricting the powers of the presidency. Do you think that's going to end with Donald Trump if they can get away with that? That's why we have a fucking constitution. That's exactly why we have a constitutional republic where you and me can take to the streets with every fucking gun we've ever met, find some more, and head to fucking Washington and kick their fucking ass. That's what we're talking about. They're trying to take away your constitutional rights. They're already been trying to flip it for decades. Decades. This is for real. This is what these crazy fucking people are going to try to shove down your throats. Just be prepared. That's why this shit is so important, what Donald Trump's doing to out all of these traitors, all of these scumbags that are in our government. They got to go down. They have to go down. This is what they're trying to do. They're trying to make us turn into the socialist utopia by any means necessary.
James, if I could just put your mind at ease, because I think you're getting a little bit out of control here and a little bit overboard and perhaps a little bit hyperbolic. If I could just put your mind at ease, it wouldn't be called the enlightened, ordained order. It wouldn't be called a coup to remove the president. I suspect it would be called something along the lines of Free the People from Tyranny Act, or perhaps the Removal of Dangerous Tyrants Act that the Democrats would push. And who could possibly stand against it? And, truth be told, the Democrats have a lot of ideas in this area with nice sounding bills that they want to present to the American people, and the Grim Reaper isn't allowing that to happen. Let's have a little look at Nana Nazi Pelosi. This is her from a few days ago. Her weekly press conference.
Good morning. Here we are.
Which is must-see viewing every week.
A late night into the next morning. I always say to the members, let's see who can.
I mean, if you're a fan of slapstick comedy, you cannot be missing Nancy Pelosi's weekly press conference, I'm telling you.
And hoot with the owls and soar with the eagles early the next morning.
Oh, yeah.
They are there on the floor with our appropriations bill.
Good on them.
I just want to start off the morning to say that Leader McConnell seems to take great pride in calling himself the Grim Reaper. It's part of his political campaign. It's part of the pride he takes as leader of the Senate.
To be fair, he's not the only one, because judging by that hideous mustard jacket with the double-breasted zippers, James, I suspect Nancy Pelosi is the Grim Reaper of fashion. Just putting that out there.
You see what he wants to bury. None of these things are going to pass. They won't even be voted on.
I think
Sorry, mate, what was that?
I think she won that in an auction on Michael Jackson's clothing.
Fantastic. Where's Bubbles? Don't be racist.
Think of me as the Grim Reaper, his own quote.
Okay.
He wants to bury the For the People Act for cleaner government.
The For the People Act, which is for cleaner government, James. Who could possibly be against that?
The Equality Act.
The Equality Act. Because we love equality. So there needs to be an Equality Act. What does that mean? Doesn't matter what it means. Everybody's in favor of equality.
For ending discrimination against LGBTQ community, dreamers, and to protect our dreams.
The dreamers and TPS, we've got to protect the dreamers, James. What about the details? Don't worry about the details. It sounds good.
Dreamers and TPS recipients, paycheck fairness, equal pay.
The Paycheck Fairness Act, James. The Paycheck Fairness Act.
What the fuck is a Paycheck Fairness Act?
Aren't there already laws in place for this kind of shit? Or am I the idiot here?
Does that mean we get it on the same paper?
I thought it already was illegal to pay people less based on, their gender and whatnot. Isn't that illegal to pay people less for the same work already?
Yeah. Isn't this qualify as the Hollywood script where they can't write new material, so they're just going to roll back 30 years and say it's all new?
Everything is old. Everything that was old is new again, James.
For equal work. Gun violence protection.
She meant to say gun violence prevention. The Gun Violence Prevention Act. She doesn't know her own act. It's like, the script writer's got to be up there somewhere going, line, Nancy. Cut. It's the Gun Violence Prevention Act, not the Protection Act. We don't want to protect gun violence. What the hell are you doing, Nancy?
Common sense background check legislation.
Common sense.
He's burying that. Climate action now.
Oh, the Climate Action Now Act, Jace.
Holy shit. I'm calling for everyone in America, if you just hold your breath for 5 minutes at the same time, we will reduce carbon emissions by up to 0.00000%.
That's right. If we stop producing cows for meat and everybody eats all the cows and then kills themselves before they fart, I think that's how we'll save the earth. Something along those lines. But again, we've talked about climate action before, haven't we? What climate action? What specific action are you endorsing here? Doesn't matter. Action. We demand action. What is that action? I don't care, but something's happening, and I love action, James.
Climate action now. Let's bury that.
Let's bury
Save the Internet Act, the net neutrality.
The Save the Internet Act.
Oh my
Save
God.
the internet. We need to save the whales, save the trees, save the dreamers, save the women, save the homosexuals, and save the internet. And that Grim Reaper, Mitch McConnell, he's going to bury all of these things. He must be an awful, awful man, James. Save the Internet Act. What do you mean? What's the detail? Doesn't matter. It sounds good, right?
The legislation young people are so concerned about. The Violence Against Women Act.
The Violence Against Women Act. I'd say this is a strange area for me, and it almost makes me want to move to the United States because I fear that soon my right to beat a woman will be taken away by the Violence Against Women Act. You know what I mean?
I want to introduce Nancy to Janet.
I feel like if my wife doesn't do the dishes, then I'm able to hit her over the head with a phone book or something now. Is that how it works now? Is that legal? I'm pretty sure that's legal, isn't it? Because they're trying to introduce the Violence Against Women Act, preventing it. So it must be like, what am I missing here? What am I missing? Well, let's carry on with Nana Nance.
Won't even get a vote. Lowering healthcare and prescription drug prices won't.
The Lowering Healthcare and Prescription Drug Prices Act, James. Yes, because all of those people who had Obamacare and were paying through the nose for policies that they were being fined because they couldn't afford it, right? Remember that? We need to protect those people and we need to provide them with lower healthcare. So isn't that funny? Sustainable development, right? Sustainable development, sustainable housing, urbanization plans, the Equality Act, the Paycheck Fairness Act. Everything sounds wonderful on the surface, but the devil is always in the detail, and it never seems to get that far, does it?
No.
Isn't that the darndest thing?
Yep. I'm serious. I want Nancy to meet any woman that I know. Like, seriously. Like, I can't name a single woman that I know that would agree with her. And I know a lot of women, number one. But I love the Women's Protection Act.
Too many.
And all of the women that I know is that the Women's Protection Act is called 357 Magnum. Okay? Like, I mean, that just right there is all you need to know, okay? The women I know, if you fucking thought about fucking hitting them with a phone book, you will be a dead motherfucker tomorrow. That's just the bottom line. Okay? So, just take it for what it's worth.
Well, when we couple that up with the Gun Violence Protection Act that Nancy Pelosi called it, I guess we're sweet then, aren't we? Living free, living large in the free world. James, I think that the GOP is really nervous about all of these acts and a whole bunch of things leading into 2020. Here's the take on it from The Hill. GOP nervous that border wall fight could prompt year-end shutdown, James. Not another shutdown, I hear you say. Let's check it out. See what they got to say for themselves.
It's only June, but President Trump's laser-like focus on immigration and desire for a border wall is making GOP lawmakers nervous that lagging talks on a budget deal could further bog down and lead to another government shutdown. Trump is demanding $5 million in border wall funding as part of a deal that would put ceilings on federal spending and raise the debt ceiling. A senior administration official on Friday said the Senate should put together appropriations bills that fund the president's border wall request. The GOP Senate could then negotiate with Democrats in the House on a compromised version of the spending bill later this year.
Yeah, because the Democrats just can't wait to compromise in the Senate and give the Republicans what they want and a brand new big beautiful wall, James. I'm sure they'll be right in for that. Trump is demanding $5 billion in border wall funding as part of a deal that would put limits on federal spending and raise the debt ceiling. Haven't we been over this? Over this? What are we missing? There's two schools of thought here primarily, and I know, James, you and I are on opposite sides of it. So allow me, if you will, to articulate my view on this, and then we'll go to you to tell me why I'm wrong and walk people off the ledge, as you so regularly do on this show. I suspect that there are two main things that Donald Trump needs in order to secure the White House in 2020. I, unlike a lot of people on this corner of the internet, do not think that it's all over. I do not think that he is guaranteed another 4 years at this point. And I would point very humbly and respectfully to recent numbers coming out of the blue wall states, which he won by a very small margin the first time around, those states ensuring he won the White House, right, in 2016, those traditionally Democratic voting states. That's your key battlegrounds there, right? But putting that to one side, two things I think he needs. He needs a high-profile, at least one or perhaps two, court case against people who have been subverting the American justice system on a grand scale. And I'm talking, like an Andrew McCabe, for example. But I'm not going to say, witch hunt. I don't want to see him strung up, but I think people do want to see some kind of movement in that area. And it's all well and good to forecast and say it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. But if it's still coming come 2020, then Donald Trump will be leaving, in my opinion. But it's just my opinion, and I could be wrong. And I also think that the people who voted for Donald Trump would need to see tangible, obvious, specific progress on the wall. Now, what does that mean? It means more than a private company putting up a few miles. It means front page of every newspaper, walls going up, construction teams out there, major news coverage going out saying, wow, he's actually doing, he's trying to address the wall. Now, you see it a little bit differently. So you tell me why I'm wrong.
Well, I think you're right for the most part. I think that most of what you're saying is right. We do absolutely, and I agreed with you. In fact, we covered this on this show 2 years ago. I mean, it was a long time ago. Whenever it was very early in your and I partnership, or you asked me the question, can Donald Trump win in 2020 if we don't start arresting people? And I said no. I was very clear and crystal about that nope, we have to clean these fucks out. And it's because the people need to know and see that there's progress being made at cleaning up our government. And it's happening right now. I mean, I know it's happening. In fact, I just posted again a tweet today where, look, on the Ladies of Liberty show, we discussed and disclosed there's 4 grand juries sat right now. So it's happening right now. Like it's not a question of we have to wait. We know it's ongoing. And today there's a story retweeted by mainstream journalists. Carter Page verified that he basically gave grand jury testimony. This is verified now that you have other sources to go to besides Ladies of Liberty that say that there's actually ongoing grand jury right now. We're indicting people as we speak. So that progress is already taken care of, and we're going to keep pursuing that line. The other point that you made about the wall, most of the Americans understand exactly where we're at with the wall, and we've won recent court cases. No matter how much court they keep trying to throw at us, we're building the wall. The money is being funneled. We're getting a border czar. We got Mexico to cave. Mexico's going to protect. We're building the wall, and by 2020, we'll have 400 miles built. Now, we have 2,000 miles of border. We have about 1,600 miles of that which needs to be secured. So if you subtract 400 from that, it'll still leave us with 1,200 miles to secure. It's a big fucking chunk. But the American people understand that it's been Congress that's been impeding it, including the Republicans. See, the voters for Trump understand and most of us are actually more independent-minded towards the middle of the vote. I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about the general big picture, big tent MAGA. So when you look at that, the people understand what's going on. They understand that they're the impediment, which I actually think encourages us to win more House seats in this next election, because people want to get the impediment out of the way. And what's the impediment? The House of Representatives. So what are we going to do when we vote? We're going to vote more Republicans in and say, look, fucksticks, last time you fucked us over, this time you better get your shit together and get our fucking wall. I think that we actually have one of the first times in the history of this country that a president will be able to run on the same campaign issue he ran on the first time without the people actually being mad at him, because they understand he's doing everything he can do, including moving money out of the military, moving money from DHS, taking all of the funds for infrastructure from every other agency and putting them into the wall. Like, he's doing everything he can do to build as much wall as humanly possible without Congress helping.
See, okay, my issue with that is, and I know I've spoken to you about this before, that was the 2018 midterm strategy, effectively, is, hey, you need to vote for more MAGA Republicans in order to get the wall done, because we need 60, right, in the Senate. and we need to hold the House in order to get the wall done, and that didn't work then. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure why going into 2020 the same strategy. You know, what do they say? The definition of insanity is trying the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, right?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I'm gonna just let me slide this in real quick and then let you get right back to it. Is that and I think that pivot point is the Mueller report and the obstruction by the Democrats. See, at the 2018, right? What were we hearing in the news constantly? Donald Trump's going to be indicted. Donald Trump Jr. is going to be indicted. There was cheating going on. Everything was obstruction of justice. They colluded with the enemy. That was a completely huge shadow and cloud over what the voting was going on. And you had idiot Republicans agreeing with these stupid fucks. So I think that I understand exactly what you're saying, but I think that is a big shadow that's now lifted, and now it's going to be on the other direction.
Okay. It's an interesting discussion to see what will happen from here either way. Right. And, you know, I think it's something that needs to be cemented in before we get into the big campaign cycle, because it is it's potentially a contentious area for Donald Trump and his support base, I think, moving into 2020. But in saying that, James, you know what's not contentious? The opinions of celebrities. Isn't this a wonderful story? Back to the Hill, ladies and gentlemen. Poll. Most voters say celebrity political endorsements don't matter. And I just want to give a big round of applause to the Hill for stating the fucking obvious one more time. Yes, thank you. Thank you. We already knew this. But let's check out the new reporting, James. That's what tonight's show should have been called. Everything that was old is new again.
All right. We found that 65% of voters say Hollywood endorsements have no bearing on their vote. Almost a quarter say it makes them less likely to vote for that candidate.
Do you know the beautiful part about this for me? The delicious, dripping, delicious irony of it all? 65% of people say celebrity endorsements have no bearing on how they vote. But 65% or more, I suspect, of Democrats, and I'm just pulling that number out, I suspect most Democrats think that Donald Trump only got elected in part because of his celebrity status. Right?
Right.
So the celebrity endorsements don't matter, but being a celebrity apparently does. Like, figure that one out.
And just 11% say it makes them more likely.
More likely.
The majorities of all parties said Hollywood endorsements have no bearing on.
I you know what? I feel so secure. I feel safe for the first time in a long time, knowing that only 11% of people are voting according to what their favorite Kardashian says. You know what I mean? Like, isn't it? Like, you give yourself a round of applause, America. Your reputation around the world is one of being obsessed with celebrity and hamburgers, right? And you have dispensed with one of those toxic narratives here today. Only 1 in 10 of you actually will vote for a politician according to what Alyssa Milano says. And you should give yourselves a big pat on the back for that. Well done. The crazies are being pushed back into the caves where they belong, James. And only 1 in 10. 1 in 10. I'm very happy for you, America. Congratulations. There's your Father's Day present right there.
I bet you if you pulled up the stats that you could find that 10% of Americans were certifiably insane. And that those two numbers would fucking line up.
I think 20% of Americans think that Elvis is still alive. Younger respondents, James, said they were more likely to say celebrity endorsements would nudge them to back a candidate. 23% of voters under the age of 35 said a Hollywood figure's seal of approval made them more likely to vote for a candidate. 12% of the respondents between 35 and 49 agreed, as did 7% of those between 50 and 64, and 1% of respondents 65 and older. But to be fair to the people who are 65 and older, I suspect it's only 1 because all of their favorite celebrities are dead. So, you know, we're gonna what would Humphrey Bogart do, James? What would he do? Who would Mae West vote for? I hear you asking from the comfort of your lazy boy. So what do you think of that, James? Are you going to be changing your vote based on what the celebrities say? I know you want to.
I'm going to follow whatever Alyssa Milano thinks is best for the country, because she did such a good job running her own life, making sure that all of her stuff was taken care of. That why would I not follow what she says? These people are certifiably fucking deranged. I mean, I can't believe anybody would say that a celebrity endorsement matters one iota. Like, who gives a shit? Like, what do they know? They know how to live a luxury lifestyle that's basically handed to them because people enjoyed watching them act. In other words, professional liars. Literally, this is what they do. They make you believe that they love somebody, that behind the scenes when the fucking cameraman says cut, they're like, go fuck yourself. I mean, professional liars, and you're going to listen to them over who to vote for. What the fuck is wrong with you, America? Like, I'm sorry. To me, 10% of people are absolutely certifiable.
Yeah, but don't take it from James, because he himself is acting. He is actually I think you'll find James in real life is a Middle Eastern woman pretending to be an Asian man in Hawaii. Right. So he's a very, very convincing liar, is the young James R. Speaking of liars, James, guess who stars on tonight's Hammering? It's the one and only Jim Acosta. Let's rock and roll.
Let's rock and roll. Let me get to the button. There we go.
Stop the hammering.
James, since the president sat down with George Stephanopoulos and gave a very revealing interview, the entire cable news world has been having a recurring conniption fit, swallowing their tongues, speaking in tongues, seeing demons, hallucinating, sweating profusely, and crawling up into a corner eventually to cry themselves to sleep at night. Jim Acosta carries on the tradition of the mainstream corporate press with this little interview on CNN yesterday.
CNN's Jim Acosta joins us now with what his sources are telling him. Jim, what are you learning about all the fallout surrounding the ABC News interview?
Yeah, John, sources telling me and Abby Phillip, my colleague, that essentially people inside the White House and outside the White House, close to the president, feel that Mr. Trump mishandled these questions coming from ABC about whether or not he would accept foreign dirt on a political opponent in the upcoming 2020 campaign. One source told me earlier today that these clips coming from ABC have been, quote, tough to watch.
To be fair. Now, that is a comment. Let's just say on an alternate plane of existence that Jim Acosta is telling the truth. And indeed, unnamed sources in the White House did say to him that these clips have been hard to watch. That could be spun a number of ways. They could have said, George Stephanopoulos is such an arrogant little shit. These clips are incredibly hard to watch, right?
I like it. I like
Keep that in mind. He didn't give any context. I'm on to you, Jimmy boy.
And they essentially feel at this point.
I mean, this clip is hard to watch, right? It doesn't mean that the sky is falling in, though.
The president did try to clean this up, but there has been some lasting damage. They're not exactly sure how much damage.
Lasting damage 24 hours later. There's been lasting damage, James. Lasting damage
was done, but there was some lasting damage from what the president said. He clearly invited foreign governments to turn over damaging information on political opponents.
He invited it.
Let me see. Let me see if I understand this right. I just want to give you the real world parallel here. So Boogie goes out and robs a bank, okay? And the cops want to know who robbed the fucking bank. The cops want to know who robbed the bank. So since I helped Boogie rob the bank, am I supposed to not tell on him? Think about that. That's the exact same parallel of what they're kind of saying here, is that if you have evidence that this motherfucker over here tried to sell the American people to Poland, Poland should not share that information with the president, nor should the president accept that information, and nor should they give that evidence to him. Think about that. That's how insane the argument here is.
The thing that gets me about all of this rubbish is the insult to the intelligence that's taking place here, James.
Right.
Because let's not pretend that it's fucking world politics, right? And world leaders talking to each other off the record has happened since the fucking leaders of Troy sat down with the leaders of Greece, right? That's been happening for a long fucking time. It happened under Barack Obama. It happened under George W. Bush. I mean, how the hell do you think that Barack Obama got, what was it, $1 billion in unmarked bills and the nuclear deal over the line? Yeah. Right? Like, do you think it was all by email? Like, what's up, Mullah? Mullah, you want some Mullah? Like, it didn't happen like that. And no, the leadership of the FBI does not get to filter conversations for the president. No. The president can talk to whoever he damn well wants to talk to pretty much about damn well anything. That's the way it works. And if he suspects something has gone awry, then he goes to the FBI because, remember, the FBI serves at the pleasure of the president. How do I know this shit? How is this common knowledge for a guy who doesn't even live in the country yet escapes all of these people on cable news? The reality is it doesn't escape them. They know it's always taken place. They know that there isn't anything necessarily inherently wrong with it, but they are fucking lying to you.
That's absolutely right. But I just want to point out real quick for the record, Boogie and I were never anywhere near that bank, and I'm keeping my mouth shut no matter what.
Yeah, throw away the key.
In that interview, and as you were just playing a few moments ago, he sort of cleared it up, but left a lot of collusion confusion because in the course of that interview on Fox and
collusion confusion,
he seemed to be saying, well, maybe I would turn it over to the FBI, but I might want to have a look at it first.
How dare he?
That's not exactly the same thing as going straight to the FBI.
He shouldn't look at things that are handed to him. He should hand them to the FBI, like a king getting a peasant to taste his steak before he eats it to make sure it's not poison, James. Right? Like, this is madness. This is lunacy, what these people are suggesting. And you can say, well, technically it's in the rules, that he shouldn't take any that information should go directly to the FBI. But that's not real world. We know in the real world. The thing that's insulting for me is now it's a problem. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yep.
Now it's criminal. Now it's a problem because they want it to be. Where in any other case, for any other president, it was just what happens.
No, just for the hold on, real quick, just for the record.
Go ahead.
I just want to point out a very key point here constitutionally. Their FBI has no authority. Let me be very clear here. The FBI has no authority. They are not vested by themselves. All authorities that are run by the executive branch are from the desk of the president. It's all his power. Every single person, including the FBI, including the Justice Department, including the military, it is all on the desk. It's all on the executive branch constitutionally. So by the foreign government giving that information directly to the president of the United States, he is giving the information to the FBI because the FBI only operates by the president's authority.
Advisors have taken issue with how Sarah Sanders handled all of this, correct?
That's right. And there was some grumbling going on inside the White House among some of the president's political advisors as to whether or not the outgoing White House press secretary simply granted too much access to the president during the course of this interview and put him in a position where he made these kinds of comments. Now, of course,
see, the framing again is the president is a big baby who can't control himself. This is something that they've been doing for the last 2 years, though, isn't it? Very slyly. You've got to be quick with this little sucker, because he's very good at slipping these little sly insults in, James, and reporting it as fact. This is not fact. There is no, verifiable evidence to suggest that the president needs a team of minders around him constantly to wrap him up in bubble wrap to make sure that he doesn't say the wrong thing. Who was watching the Conservative leadership spill over in the UK with me in the wee small hours of the morning the other day? Because this is the exact same thing that they're painting with Boris Johnson. Now, they're saying that Boris Johnson is avoiding interviews because he can't help himself but put his foot in it, right? He cannot help himself but fuck it up. Because every time he opens his mouth, he gives people an opportunity. He gives himself an opportunity to lose something. This is the same way they paint the president as well. The president who can say one thing on Twitter and have all of their heads exploding simultaneously cannot be trusted to say things to people. Like, figure that out. right? Oh, it's Sarah Sanders' fault. She gave too much access to the big orange baby, and he blurted out things that he shouldn't have blurted out. And he should give things to the FBI before looking at it because he's a big baby. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's stupid, right? That's the inference that's being created here. And these people are very good at it.
Of course, it was the president's decision to do the interview and also make those remarks, so you can't blame too much of this on Sarah Sanders.
He decided for himself, James. The big president decided all on his own to do the interview. Wow.
Sanders, but there was some finger pointing going on inside the White House and among the president's political advisors, and it just goes to show you, John, that there was concern as to what the president said. Otherwise, they wouldn't be pointing fingers at one another.
The anonymous source, James, says that people were pointing fingers at each other after the president spoke to George Stephanopoulos on ABC. They were pointing fingers at Sarah Sanders, saying that she didn't do her job in protecting the president. She was pointing fingers at the president's advisors who advised him that he should or should not do the interview. This is all the anonymous source, and it just goes to show you that it must be true because the anonymous source said so. Like, see, the verification for the story is the same thing as the story itself. That's not the way it works, Jim.
It's a big
That's not the way it works. Exactly. Circular logic.
The people you're talking to, Jim, do they think these comments from the president are going to hurt him with his supporters at all?
You know, what we're hearing at this point, and John...
Can anybody point to any comment that the president has made that's hurt him with his supporters yet in the last 2 years?
Oh, by the way... just by the way, because you just asked that question, the latest approval numbers are up again, 51%. So, yeah, fuck everybody.
There you go. I mean, he is on record, even by CNN's own polling, he is the most popular Republican president of all time, eclipsing Ronald Reagan.
Yes.
Right? Oh,
yes.
Are people suggesting in the White House that this could hurt the president with his supporters? I'm actually dumbfounded that some things that the president says doesn't hurt him with his supporters, to be honest, at this point. Like, I'm amazed some of the things he comes out with. I'm like, will the MAGA people get upset at this? And they're like, no, fuck it, burn it all. I'm like, okay.
Hey, by the way, real quick, I got breaking news from the chat room. An anonymous source says Jim Acosta sucks.
Just one? Just one source? I think we can verify that lickety-split.
You and I have seen this movie before. When the president makes these sorts of remarks, it is kind of incredible how much Teflon coating he has when it comes to this issue of interference in our elections.
There you go.
2.5 minutes into the interview, Jim Acosta laying some truth on the audience. Well done, Jim. For the first time, of course, using the Teflon Don reference, which is a reference to a mafia boss, John Gotti, James, you'll be pleased to know. Of course, another sly, little slippery, little backhanded remark in there. He's very good at this shit.
The sources that we've been talking to over the last 24 hours have told us essentially they feel, though, that this is just an issue for Democrats and people in the media, not necessarily something that's going to dent his support among his supporters. And I think one true sign of that came earlier today, John, when the Senate Majority Leader was thanked by the president on Twitter for Mitch McConnell's comments to Fox News that essentially the public needs to move on all of this and that Democrats are never going to give this up. It's just one more example when it comes to this issue of foreign interference. It seems that the leadership of the Republican Party has essentially had this president's back no matter what he says.
Does anybody here see the irony of Jim Acosta explaining to his audience that the president is correct without saying that the president... Do you see what happened just there in that little grab? Jim Acosta says that his unnamed sources in the White House are saying that this whole issue with this interview with ABC is really just an issue for the Democrats and the media. And without actually saying that they're right, and it is an issue for the Democrats and the media, Jim Acosta then spins it to say, well, that shows that the Republicans have always had their back, while his head is exploding on live TV because he's confused that nobody else gives a fuck. Nobody else cares except Jim Acosta, the corporate press, and the few Democrats who are still sticking their noses so far up the president's ass to smell what he had for breakfast that they cannot see the forest for the trees. And most people do not give one single jot about this issue. And I think that, they just cannot help themselves but burn themselves to death on this whole collusion thing. And if that wasn't enough for you, James, 2016. We haven't sorted out the 2016 collusion issue yet. We're going to keep investigating it now, but we're also going to accuse Donald Trump of forecasting collusion in the 2020 campaign. That's what will sink him on in 2 years from now. There's your hammering.
Stop the hammering.
Folks, that's all the time we got for you this week. And just for the record, in case my girl is watching this, I don't know any other women. Please don't kill me. If you want to follow him, you can follow him at Boogie Bumper. If you want to follow me, you can follow me at Real Person Politics. If you want to follow us, you can follow us at TAVshow.com. Everybody, thanks for being here. One more week in the bag. We will see you. Aloha. Everybody have a great night.
Victory is not winning for our party. Victory is winning for our country. This year, America will recognize two important anniversaries that show us the majesty of America's mission and the power of American pride. In June, we mark 75 years since the start of what General Dwight D. Eisenhower called the Great Crusade, the Allied liberation of Europe in World War II. On D-Day, June 6, 1944, 15,000 young American men jumped from the sky and 60,000 more stormed in from the sea to save our civilization from tyranny. Here with us tonight are three of those incredible heroes. Private First Class Joseph Riley, Staff Sergeant Irving Locker, and Sergeant Herman Zaitchik.